Hi folks, and welcome to this week's rally show. Thank you so much for your great feedback for the last one where I went and visited all the cars. It was fantastic to hear from you all. As usual, I'd like to thank the channel sponsor, 5-Star Vehicle Delivery, and also I've been getting a lot of comments about my artwork. This is a fantastic painter called David Kelsall Arts. You'll find him on Facebook. So we're going a different direction this week on the rally show, and we're going to look at the career of one of my favourite drivers, Pentti Airikkala. So let's go. So it is November 1990 in Cropton Forest, one of the famous ultra-fast Yorkshire stages, made even faster that year by the introduction of pace notes for the very first time in RAC rally history. In typical RAC heavy rain and murk, car number 1, an autoglass backed Group A Sapphire Cosworth, is in the process of being destroyed in a violent high-speed accident. The cause of the crash has always been the subject of controversy, and both error and mechanical failure have been blamed over the years. The crew, thankfully, walked away physically unscathed, but what is certain is that it brought down the curtain on the professional career of Pentti Airikkala, arguably the most enigmatic and underachieving rally driver in history. Pentti could sit in any car, be it a rear-wheel drive, front-engine BDA Escort, Manta 400, a mid-engine Group B Lancia 037, a front-wheel drive Astra GTE, or a four-wheel drive, four-wheel steering Mitsubishi Galant, and instantly make it sing, while setting opposition destroying pace, of course. Pentti was quick on gravel, quick on snow, and rare for a Finn in the 70s and 80s, quick on tarmac also. Clearly, this was a man not short of talent. So how on earth did a driver with these gifts finish his career with just one WRC win and a handful of podiums? The answer is complicated, and so was Pentti. The easy option for myself at this point would be to reel off a series of achievements and career stats in chronological order. However, Pentti Airikkala's career was long and varied, and this would be a fairly turgid read if it was to be done in that format. So instead, we'll briefly cover his early career and look at some of his outstanding performances that mark him out as a special talent, and also look at why he seemingly blew hot and cold so often. Pentti was born in Helsinki in 1945 and passed away in 2009 at the age of 64. He rallied a lot. He began in 1965, scoring a top 20 finish on his first attempt at the Thousand Lakes rally later that year. The rest of the 60s would involve competing on finish events in the Isuzu 1600 and a Renault 8 Gordini. The results were decent without being earth-shattering, even when you factor in the standard of opposition around in Finland at that time. A switch to Local Cadet Rally brought Pentti his first outright win on the 1972 Manta Rally. But other than that, results continued to be patchy into the mid-70s. On the face of it, for a guy approaching 30 with 10 years of competition behind him, these results would suggest he was nothing special. They certainly did nothing to indicate what was about to come from him. A move to Britain in 1975 brought instant success with a win on the Tour of Dean in an RS 1600. With no less a name than Henry Liddon alongside. It was enough to get him some drives with DTV in the Magnum, which would be the start of a successful association with them. The Magnum wasn't a great car and was really just there to bridge the gap until the Chevette was ready for the 1976. Airikkala would compete in the British Championship in a Team Avon-backed Escort. It was to be the season that changed his life and took him from being an unknown Finn to being established as one of the hottest new talents around, and won him a place in the hearts of British rally fans. Pentti was sensational in 1976. The quality of opposition in Britain was high. Aside from the great Roger Clark and his Escort, there were works teams from BL, Opel, the checkered flag Stratos, and fellow hot young talents like Russell Brooks and Harry Vatanen also in escorts. Airikkala won the Snowman Rally outright in his Mark 1 escort and was second in a further 3 rounds, the Welsh, the Lindisfarne and the Castrol International. He also competed in 2 WRC events, the Thousand Lakes and the RAC in 1976 in a Mark II RS 1800. He didn't win either rally, but in terms of establishing his talent in front of an international audience, he absolutely knocked it out of the park on both of them. A quick glance at the entry list for the 1976 Thousand Lakes tells you it was pretty strong. Mikkola, Blomqvist, Allen, Mäkinen, Lampinen, Ekland, Kulang are all on there before you get down to Airikkala at number 12 in his Team Avon Mark II escort. Allen took the first of 4 victories in 5 years on his home event, but remarkably, amongst all of that talent, it was actually Pentti who pushed him all the way, finishing second, just 45 seconds down at the end, having set more fastest times than anyone else at 17, and squarely beating the other Thousand Lakes masters Mikkola and Mäkinen. That was impressive enough and seemingly came out of nowhere, but he would so nearly go one better against even stronger opposition on that year's RAC rally. He was heartbreakingly close to pulling off the biggest shock in RAC rallying history. The 1976 RAC had an entry list of extreme quality, Mäkinen defending his hat-trick, Blomqvist, Mikkola, Valdegaard, Minari in the Stratos, Clark and the young guns of Brooks and Vatanen. Such quality, in fact, that you'd have to look down as far as number 22 to find the Team Avon escort of Airikkala and co-driver Mike Greasley. And in true Pentti style, he made a complete mockery of the form guide and the seeding. He was right on the heels of the leaders early on and moved into the overall lead on stage 11 when Vatanen hit trouble. The nonsense couldn't last, surely, except it did. No fewer than 22 fastest stage times helped him hold the lead through Yorkshire, Kielder, Scotland and the Lake District, then all the way back to Bath for the rest halt. On through the West Country and into Wales, Pentti repelled attacks from Clark and Blomqvist and kept the lead, but the car was starting to give trouble, and on the Pint Pathog stage, the clutch failed and he was out. Clark was through. He won his second RAC rally. Pentti's retirement had come just 4 stages from home. Rallying can be a cruel sport, and it's hard to imagine how devastating it must have been to drive so brilliantly and have a famous win snatched away by fate so late in the day. There was, however, a silver lining. His point had been emphatically made. The rally world was now fully aware of his ability, and contracts were on the table. He signed for DTV to drive the all-new Chevette for 1977. A car that would bring him plenty of success and would arguably be the car he is most closely associated with, although there are a few others. In retrospect though, signing for DTV is also one of the reasons that he did not achieve what he should have at WRC level. The team had neither the budget nor the commercial need to take on a significant WRC programme. Vauxhalls aren't sold in most countries, so there was no commercial gain to be made by competing anywhere other than Britain and selected European rounds. They only ventured into the WRC for the Swedish Thousand Lakes and RAC rallies. As iconic as the Chevette is, it was better suited to tarmac than these rallies, and Pentti didn't stand much of a chance beating the Escorts and Fiats. An uncomfortable but nevertheless very important element which would seem to have hindered Airikkala's path to the very top of the sport was his mental state. Former co-drivers and crews are on record as saying that Pentti was prone to bad mood swings. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence to suggest that he could be happy and charming, the life and soul one day, and miserable, obnoxious, and having a pop at everybody around him the next. And this could affect preparation, the car setup, and his performance on rallies. I wouldn't mind a bet that if he were to be diagnosed today, he would at the very least be bipolar. That's enough negativity though. I want to celebrate some of the brilliant and storming drives which made fans love him, opponents fear him, and team managers want to keep employing him into his mid-40s. 1977, the first year with the Chevette, as a BHP film dubbed it, went pretty well, with wins on the Welsh, Castrol and Manx rallies. Pentti, although developed a particular liking for the Yorkshire Forest, he was the Walter Roll of the Mintex National Breakdown Cartel rallies, with 4 wins in 4 different makes of cars, and they were all two-wheel drive, of course. And the Mitsubishi Starion was another in 1988, but 2 of his very best drives, in my opinion, were his wins in 1981 and 1987. Both were snowy, icy and slushy. In 1981 he returned to the Ford fold to drive the now outdated Rothmans-backed Sutton Escort in the British Open Championship. His teammate that year was Malcolm Wilson, an opponent to Tony Pond's Chevette, Jimmy McRae's Skoda 400, Russell Brooks' Sunbeam and Per Eklund's Toyota Celica. On the Mintex, Pentti's skill and experience on ice and snow saw his Escort simply drive away from the opposition and win the 24-hour rally by an incredible 6-minute margin. By 1987, the Mintex had become the national breakdown, and back injuries and other issues had meant Pentti had slipped down the pecking order somewhat. He'd had 2 successful years driving a Group A front-wheel drive Astra for General Motors in the British Championship, but at 41-year-old and no longer visa seeded, it appeared to many that he was past his best. With his famous British Telecom sponsorship, he managed to get his hands on the Manta 400 for the first time and proved the doubters wrong by winning the event outright. It was a snowy one and hardly ideal for the Manta. He beat 4-wheel drive cars and, perhaps more impressively, beat his old adversary Russell Brooks, who was in his 4th season driving the Manta at that point. Pentti once again showed his sheer class, and it seemed that it wasn't quite over for Pentti. As already mentioned, it was very rare in this era for a Scandinavian to be quick on tarmac, as they were on gravel and snow. Airikkala was certainly an exception to this, and the Chevette was an excellent tarmac car. He won the 1977 Manx and 79 Ulster, but amongst his very best drives was his utterly dominating win on the 1979 Circuit of Ireland. Although not in the WRC, it was widely regarded at the time as being as tough as any rally in Europe. The 1979 event had 630 stage miles over 5 days, and it had been high quality entry. In addition to his own teammate Jimmy McRae, there was a Fiat for Timo Salonen, a TR7 for Per Eklund, a Saab for Blomqvist, a Sunbeam for Tony Pond, escorts for double winners Russell Brooks and Billy Coleman, as well as emerging stars Henry Toivonen and Malcolm Wilson. Airikkala won from the front and saw various challenges to cruise home 11 minutes clear of Billy Coleman. He was the only non-British or Irish driver to win the circuit in its marathon format, and surely this alone confirms him as an exceptional talent. He also put in a brilliant performance on the 83 circuit. His first drive in a Lancia 037 rally saw him lead at the first half of the rally before going off. 2 punctures then cost him quarter of an hour, but he still set a string of fastest times and roared back up to the 3rd before retiring. Another unsuccessful but memorable performance that got him a works drive on that year's Thousand Lakes rally. There were other memorable drives. Who could forget his spectacular and entertaining performances in the Mitsubishi Starion, which brought him a couple more BRC wins, including the Cartel and another Welsh, and he only drove in a Lancia Delta Integrale, which netted him 4th overall in that year's RAC in more snowy conditions. He did take several WRC podiums. We've mentioned the 1976 Thousand Lakes, but there was also third on the 78,000 Lakes and the 1979 and 81 Swedish rallies, and a remarkable third overall on the 1982 Thousand Lakes in a Mitsubishi Colt Lancer Turbo, beaten only by four-wheel drive Quattros. He was also crowned British Open Rally Champion in 1979, which was his only major title, but by 1989 it looked for all the money in the world that at 44 years of age his chance of winning a WRC rally was gone forever. But his incredible ability and tenacity would once again prove the rally world wrong. 1989 didn't start so promisingly for Pentti. He did have a drive in the BRC, but it was in a showroom class Mitsubishi, which stood no chance at all of overall success. Although he did dutifully see off a young Colin McRae and won the Group N Championship. As a thank you for this, he was given a drive on that year's RAC in the second Works Group A Galant VR4 as a backup to Ari Vatanen. Lancia had opted not to come to Britain, having already won both the world titles. But that realistically only took Marco Allen out of the running as a serious contender on a blind forest rally. Toyota had Celica GT4s for Kankkunen, Ericsson, David Llewellyn and rising star Carlos Sainz, and there was also Mazda 323s for Salin, Mikkola and Carlson. Airikkala was content to sit behind the Toyotas and Vatanen in the first half of the event, but one by one they hit trouble in Grisdale and Kielder. It was Sainz who would emerge from Kielder with a healthy lead from Airikkala. Now comfortable with the car's setup, Pentti scented blood and began a phenomenal charge, setting the rally alight with a string of fastest times throughout Scotland and Yorkshire to close the gap on the Spaniard to under 30 seconds after the Toyota broke a drive shaft 3 stages from home. An ironic way for Pentti to finally claim that first WRC win, given that he had lost it himself in 1976 in remarkably similar heartbreaking circumstances. He could hardly contain his joy at the finish. This one-off drive led to a short-term contract with Ford in 1990 to test and develop the new 4x4 Sapphire Cosworth, and that brings us back to Cropton in the rain and muck of the 1990 RAC rally. His influence on rallying didn't quite end there. When his driving career was over, he opened a rally school in Oxfordshire and taught future stars including Richard Burns and Latvala the art of left foot braking and the Scandinavian flick. It is customary to sum up these driver profile pieces by saying things like, nobody had a bad word to say about him. This wasn't always the case with Pentti Airikkala. His dark moods could make life difficult for his team and his crew, and they, along with his back injuries and loyalty to teams who couldn't run a serious WRC programme at the peak of his powers, are probably what stopped him from fulfilling his true potential. He could also be warm, funny and charming though, and you certainly won't find anybody out there who did not respect and admire him for his incredible skill, speed, technical knowledge and staying power. He gave British rally fans some incredible memories over a long period, and that is what makes Pentti Airikkala one of our favourite Flying Finns.